I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Boulder Valley Board of Education for Tuesday, April 12th, 2016. Laura, could you please call the roll?
Belval.
Here.
Benford.
Here.
Fuqua.
Here.
Garcia.
Here.
Gebhardt.
Here.
Marquis.
Here.
Myers.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Sorry for being a little late to start. I want to remind everybody that the mission of the Boulder Valley School District is to create challenging, meaningful, and engaging learning opportunities so that all children thrive and are prepared for successful, civically engaged lives. Well, we had our spring break. It's been a while since we've been together. Happy to see all of the board members here and members of the public as well. We'll begin, as always, with the superintendent's report. Dr. Messenger.
President Fuqua, members of the board, welcome, and those in attendance this evening. I have just a brief report this evening. I just want to reflect a little bit on activities last week. Our community, the CU Boulder, and our community hosted the Conference of World Affairs, and so big happenings that impacted a lot of our students and faculty and community members, and so I know a number of you were directly involved, and I personally had a chance to participate also, so a really enriching opportunity for our community. I moderated a panel on Friday with students from Muslim countries who were here through a grant program through the U.S. Department of Ed, and it happened to be that 3 of the students were being hosted by families in Juneau, Alaska, so it was interesting for them to describe their experience in America and specifically in Alaska, which, as you know, I have some familiarity with, and so it was but they were bright, engaging, and somewhat entertaining students, and so I know Tina set in on part of that as well. So anyway, an appreciation to the university and others for helping put that together, and a lot of community volunteers make it happen. So the other thing I just wanted to reference, we're going to talk a little bit later in the agenda about legislative issues, so I won't go there right now, but I just wanted to mention we are very much in our testing season right now. We are, going through the process. We have about a little over 20% of our students who have opted out of taking the PARCC assessment and some of the other assessments as well. That varies by grade level. Our highest opt-out percentage is at the high school level, about 1 in 2, about 50%, less so in the middle, and even less so, about 10% only in the elementary. So anyway, I sent you a note yesterday indicating that Chalkbeat is doing an article on that. I've not seen it being published yet, but they're doing some follow-up just on the whole testing picture, and I think the 9th grade PARCC assessment will continue to be a topic of discussion at the legislative arena as well as probably in our own district. So anyway, a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, Commissioner Crandall came up to our district and visited with some students from Fairview High School about student assessments. So Don Stinsrud, Mark Schaefer, several of us sat in on that conversation. It was engaging, and we'll see where that all goes. But anyway, we appreciate the Commissioner taking time to come up and visit. So with that, I will conclude my comments, and I'd be glad to answer questions about those topics or any others.
Any questions for Dr. Messenger? Tina.
Yeah, thanks for moderating. That was a great panel, and it was so strange that they went to Alaska. I have no idea how they got sent there. Do we have a goal for when we'll publish the testing schedule for next year? Can we, if parents are wondering for planning and stuff like that, when did we set it this year? When were we able to communicate?
So we communicated it formally in January.
Okay.
We had received it earlier than that. I don't know that we've received official assessment schedule for 16-17 yet. We held off a bit this year just so we didn't pile things on top of each other, but we certainly can make it available as soon as it becomes available. Yeah. But we've not received it yet.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if there's a way to include it in the BVSD planning calendars that are online. I know it's school by school, but it might be helpful for parents for vacations and stuff like that.
Probably the official publications we can't because those are already out.
Right.
But maybe once this gets into a better rhythm and predictability, I mean, as you know, it changed quite a bit because of legislative action from that this year. But we certainly could put a note in the calendar section or a section on the website once we have it.
Other questions? Jenny.
So what are the consequences to Boulder Valley of the opt-out rate? My understanding is that we're supposed to be trying for a 95% participation rate, which it doesn't sound like we're making.
Yeah, I don't anticipate we'll achieve that by district at any level, given what we know today, because what happens is that a number of families opted out through the electronic format we used or paper format in advance, but what we're finding is that as the window actually is here, that then folks exercise that right, which we said would be fine. We just wanted as much notice as we could. There was no consequence from the U.S. Department of Education as a result of under-participation across the country. I think with the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which is Every Student Succeeds Act now, ESSA, I mean, I'm not sure we really know, Jenny, what consequences will be at the federal level. And I will say that at the state level, they're still working through accreditation and accountability procedures within the department. So, I mean, we find ourselves in this really interesting situation in Colorado, which I conveyed in my interview with Chalkbeat this week, is that, you know, we're told that we expect every student to participate and we'd like to see 95%, and then we also pass legislation that makes sure that we absolutely make opting out available and no consequences for that. So we're trying to do both of those things, but, you know, at least what's happening in our community, a fair number of students and families are opting out. So it's sort of a mixed message we're sending to our students and families. But I don't know any more than that right now, but we'll, as they work through some of those decisions, we'll let you know.
What are we doing with those students? Last year, there was some concern about students not having any options at school if they didn't take the test. And
so we've invited all students to come to school, even if they don't take the test. And so if they choose to, they'll be provided a constructive, positive work environment to do their work. What we've also committed to is to not introduce new instruction to students who opt out, so that there isn't an incentive to opt out of the test. So it's trying to find that balance. But if they choose to stay home during those testing windows and coordinate that with the school, those would be excused absences. So we're not requiring them to come to school, but they're welcome to come to school, because for some students and families, given the test schedule, that's just easier for them to do that. So that has created a little tension and challenges depending on the number of students that opt out. I think at the high schools it's particularly complicated because of the high number of students who opt out, and students of freshman level who are taking upper level courses, they opt out and they're in an AP course. Does that course go on? So those are some of the complications that it's a little more difficult to manage at the high school level, but we're doing our best.
so are we just sending kids at the elementary level to the library, or?
That would be one location, or other study locations. What we are trying not to do is have them be in the test setting. That's been advised against. So, a place that's supervised that they can go and be.
But that's an extra burden on, say, the people who are supervising.
Yeah,
that
it's one more
area.
thing to do. And again, with proctors and trying to get those right, I mean, we've conveyed our concern to those who care about this issue, because it really is sort of both a mixed message and also just fairly complicated. You know, I think we'd believe if we get the testing level, the right balance, and embed it and have it be meaningful to instruction, then more of our students would take the test and it would become less of an issue. But we're just not there right now with the state assessment.
Shelley?
Yeah, do we know how many of those opt-outs were around the ninth grade assessment versus?
The highest percentage is around ninth grade, and about 50% of the freshman students opted out. That was the last data I saw at the end of last week, 55% actually, I think. And that isn't evenly distributed across our schools, but we'll know that when the dust settles, because we'll know which students actually took the test. So
Okay, that's what I was
the
gonna
highest
ask
percentage.
you, is did you know the breakdown between high schools, but you don't have that right now?
I just don't have it in front of me right now, and we'll want to get through the whole testing window, so because again, some opt out on the day of, so.
Richard? Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Messenger. Next item on our agenda, our District Accountability Committee report, looking at the district UIP. DAC members approaching the podium. Good to see you again.
I know. You guys are going to miss me when I stop coming to these.
We
huh?
will.
I know. So thank you. I am Lisa Medler from the District Accountability Committee. I also brought with me a guest, Shadron Noonan. She's also on the executive committee. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Shadron Noonan. I'm the membership chair for DAC this year and a parent of a student at Birch.
Hi. I want to point out at the last meeting when we talked about the survey results in particular, you heard me mention her name several times, so now you have a face with a name. She did a really nice job of leading that analysis and putting those graphics together. So that is Shadron. So tonight we wanted to come and provide, one of our other duties is to provide our advice to you on the Unified Improvement Plan. And so you'll see that the reference to that is at the top of the memo. So we've come in the past. I feel like I have good news this year, and that is in the past, I think we've been a little bit frustrated with the timing and not really feeling like we were included in providing some of that advice back. This year, we got it much earlier in the year and had some time to talk about it and actually offer advice. And so it's pretty short, and that is we felt like it was well aligned with the strategic plan, which is something that we had recommended in the past. So that's progress forward. And also just wanted to take note that the district at least tried to use whatever data was available to them during the state assessment transition, and knowing that there are not common local assessments in place yet. And so I know the district's hands were tied to some degree, but I know they really tried to use whatever data sources were available and wanted to recognize that. Underneath that, you'll see that we then are making recommendations moving forward into the future. And really, it's talk about the role of DAC with the district and in our capacity to advise you, and that is to get ahead of the curve even more. So while we were really pleased to be able to get the plan as early as January this past year, we'd like it actually sooner. It's because we'd like to take on a more real discussion with the district and even provide some of that accountability piece of checking in quarterly, like is expected at the school level with the school level plans. So what we are in an ideal world, and granted we know that we are not always operating in an ideal world, the district could be updating its plan now in the spring, and then the DAC could kind of move forward with the district, providing some oversight. I know we've talked about having something similar with the strategic plan. Really, we see these as being woven together. But if we can help with that progress monitoring, looking at and helping come up with ways to measure that, then this is where your one citizen group then can really act with some knowledge on how to do that and kind of just ask those hard questions, again, having knowledgeable parents at the table. And then finally, really just trying to help schools remain involved. We have really tried to build as a part of our routine having the school accountability committee connected to the district accountability committee, and so trying to help them get a head start. That last bullet really gets at having the district identify what are those best practices that they want in place. This year they took on a new stance and required some specific focal areas based on the strategic plan. So continuing along that direction, just really trying to get out to schools in advance as much as possible, and then that will enable DAC members to work with their SACs a little bit more meaningfully as well. So I will and then in the following page, you'll see, this is almost more for us. This is just a summary of some of the data that the DAC looked at over the past year. We wanted to take time to summarize it for you as well, but it's almost a placeholder for us moving into next year. Again, since there are not a lot of data sources available to us right now during all these transitions, we wanted to at least take the time to document what we looked at and some of the trends that we saw. At the last meeting, you noticed that we had really pushed hard on having a continued focus on special populations within the district, and this particular summary gets at why the DAC is continuing to recommend that. So just having some evidence behind why we're making the recommendations that we're making. So that's available to you as well. Shadron, unless you have something to add, I'm going to open it up to questions.
Board members, questions for our DAC representatives? Tina?
Yeah, thanks so much for putting this together and for adding the data onto it, because it was just really nice that we're all looking at the same set of data. And I think that's all from the CDE website, is that, or is it from the district?
It is, yeah, I think it's all available at the state level. There was an attempt to look at some of the READ Act data. If you read that section, you'll notice that I think folks were struggling with how to interpret it, but there's, it's new assessments there as well. So I think Shadron actually could speak to that a little bit more than I did.
Well, because Boulder Valley School District is currently using a couple of different types of interim assessments, and then those don't necessarily track with the way data has historically been aggregated for success and rating. So it's hard to interpret two different data sets with different baselines and come up with a meaningful conclusion. That having been said, I was part of the working group in DAC that did look at the reading trends, and that's why we qualified some of our thoughts there with the note at the top. We did what we could with sort of short-term state data, and I think the consensus at DAC is as these state-based assessments move forward and we go from maybe having an interim to a long-term assessment, this data will become more meaningful. But again, the same trend as with the other two data sets, whatever set of statistics you want to look at, we do notice a difference in trends in special populations versus the district at large. And I think if you wanted to take away for the reading section, that's probably the most important takeaway.
And so then my other question was, on the root cause number 1, it's listed ineffective interventions, and the solution is the MTSS program. Did you discuss how you would be able, as a DAC, to see that the MTSS was occurring at the SAC level? Did you talk about that relationship there? Because that's something I kind of wonder about.
So I would say for this year, no, but that's part of why I think you see the recommendations at the bottom moving into next year, that if you want a citizen group, a knowledgeable citizen group to actually weigh in on that, that's something where I think we need to spend some time educating the DAC, helping them look for that at the school level, and then also looking at it at the district level. I think that's a role that this group is ready and wants to take on, but it would take a little bit more aligning of the systems and kind of bringing folks up to speed.
I think that's a great recommendation, and thanks for putting that forth. So I hope that we can talk about that at some point.
That'd be great.
Other questions? Kathy?
First of all, thank you for doing this and diving in and presenting to us. I really appreciate it, because I know you all have spent a lot of time doing this, and you have full-time jobs and families, and so thank you.
But we get paid a lot, so it's really okay.
Yeah, no, so do
for
we.
being on DAC,
Maybe we should quit
yeah, you
school
should
board
really
and go on to
consider how much you
DAC.
pay us.
So, did you have more discussion about the identification of benchmarks and what the feedback loops might look like? Did you have, can you take that another level down as to what that might look like, so that would know what to do to help make that goal more realistic?
I think in the review process this year, where our review of the UIP was pretty short-lived, even though we did get a copy in January, and here we are in April, I think establishing benchmarks is something that we can do once we have a more consistent interaction with the UIP throughout the year. Right now, we kind of come in towards the end of the process, and everybody's kind of done the hard work that school year, and we're kind of Monday morning quarterbacking a little bit. And I think that we would like to kind of improve the interaction between the UIP and the DAC, and then I think from there you go to that space of establishing benchmarks and looking at aspects of the strategic plan like MTSS. I think the membership wants to do that. I think it's just we've struggled on how to get there.
Can I
Yeah.
jump in? It's my understanding that the district is moving towards some common assessments. Is that right? You guys had voted on that recently. With getting something like that in place, that's obviously a little bit far off in the future because there's a selection process and all that. But that kind of data actually would be really valuable to the DAC. That is the kind of information that DAC's going to want. So that's one area. The other is, I know this is something that we talked about quite a bit at the last meeting, and that is that focus on socio-emotional supports. And that's been a strong recommendation, that has really bubbled up directly from the schools themselves. And I think that even if you guys were to want to assign that as a particular focus area for the DAC, that might be something that they could really dig in. I know the district's trying to partner with some other organizations and may have other ideas, but it seems to me that that's an area where some creativity is needed to really get at that and work with schools and actually report back on some progress there. So those are two things off the top of my head that I think would be good areas to focus on in the future.
Other questions? Richard?
Thank you all. You do a lot of work. I was at the DAC meeting last Tuesday, I believe it was, and I'll be reporting back during board communications, but one of the things that they asked me is to ask the board, what do we do with all that wonderful information that they bring to us? What do we do with it after we hear from them? So I think that we need to have a discussion in terms of what we do with the information that is brought forth to us from DAC. So we'll talk about that later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Jenny?
So we just finished talking about the high opt-out rate for assessments in Boulder Valley, and I wonder if DAC has discussed how that affects the work that goes on with the UIP and what you've concluded about that.
So I would say we've not had a formal discussion. Certainly, it has come up as questions, and so there's been a little bit of peripheral discussion around it. I think there is, you'll notice, as Tina had pointed out, that the little bit of data that we had was really reliant on what was available from state assessments.
Yeah.
And if there is a high level of opt-out, especially at certain levels, then I feel like that data is pretty suspect and should be looked at very carefully, if at all. So I think that's something that we're going to have to, that group is going to have to wrestle with, as are you, as is the district. So yeah, I think it's a concern area. You'll notice again, when asked about feedback loops and what data to look at, I really focused on district level assessments, and if that's something the district wants to invest in, that could be really valuable. That it's something the district's going to have to focus on, making sure that there's wide participation. And then things like the socio-emotional supports, again, that's an area that keeps coming up. There's got to be some ways for us to get in there and make sure that we get really representative data. So that's something of concern, but to be honest, we've not set it up to be a huge focal point because there's been so much other work.
Thank you, and thank you for your work on this.
Any other board members with questions for our DAC representatives? Oh, Kathy, you have another question?
Just to follow up on the social emotional question, have you guys had a discussion about what kind of benchmarks and feedback loops would be helpful? Or is it more that we're just kind of starting down that path and we'll develop them as we go?
I think we were kind of looking at two things as part of that. One is the strategic plan and the items that are outlined in the strategic plan to help develop some of those benchmarks. The other thing is, and Lisa referred to this a second ago, is we know the district is working with some consultants to develop those supports, and I think that our membership is kind of curious to see what the result of that consultant's feedback is in terms of perhaps what we ought to be looking at. So I suspect that that's something that we'll flesh out as we move into the next school year, as that report is done, and then maybe some of the strategic plan working groups come back with some updates as well.
All right. Dr. Messenger, any comments on what you've heard? Okay. Good. Yeah. Lisa and Shadron, thank you very much, and please extend our gratitude to the entire DAC. You guys do great work, and we know it takes a lot of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is public hearing and public participation. The board recognizes the value of public comment on issues related to the operation of the schools. To ensure that our meeting is conducted in an orderly manner, we ask that persons who address the board confine your comments to matters that are germane to the business of the school district. Speakers on agenda items will be heard first, followed by those speaking to non-agenda items. Please limit your presentation to 2 minutes. If we go over the first hour, public comment will continue at the end of the meeting. Recognize that students often attend or view our meetings. Speakers' remarks, therefore, should be suitable for an audience that includes kindergarten through 12th grade students. The board president may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement that is unrelated to the business of the district or inappropriate for K-12 students. There is a lighting system on the podium, starting at green when your 2 minutes starts, turning yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining, and turning red at the end. When the light turns red, please wrap up your comments so that the board can hear from the maximum number of speakers. I have a number of people signed up this evening, some of them on agenda items, some of them on non-agenda items. I will try to take the agenda items first. Our first speaker is Jeremy Dillingham. Mr. Dillingham, welcome.
So thank you for taking the time tonight to listen to me. My name is Jeremy Dillingham, and my son Jacob goes to Escuela Pioneer Bilingual School. And I'm here tonight to appeal the non-renewal of Jenny Karani, who is currently Jacob's second grade teacher. When we found out she wasn't being renewed, I felt confusion, anger, and profound sadness. I cannot begin to tell you what a mistake this is to allow her to leave Pioneer. In the year that Jacob has been with Jenny, she's helped him to achieve, to feel safe and comfortable, and most importantly, to truly learn. I could tell you about the hard data that's taken him from being behind in reading 6 months to grade level, that she's encouraged him in math to a place where he's among the top of his grade in the noetic math test he took last week, or other data points that are both quantifiable and specific. However, that's only part of the powerful impact she's had on our son. When Jacob entered her class, he was full of anxiety. Anxiety about school, anxiety around asking questions, anxiety about playing on the playground, anxiety about learning, and anxiety about being in second grade. Jenny identified these issues very early on. She engaged with us as parents in a constructive and helpful way. She volunteered to meet with us after class. She exchanged emails after hours and worked with us to co-create a plan. She adapted her teaching to accommodate and encourage him. She partnered with kids that would help him feel comfortable and grow. And in a continuous series of actions, both small and large, she led to a tremendous transformation that caused our little boy to feel safe, to love both school and learning, and to really blossom. I implore you to reconsider her non-renewal. It's a tremendous mistake. We've had the privilege of a year with being one of the best teachers in Boulder Valley, but what about the kids to come who won't have this opportunity to shape their education and possibly change their lives for the better, as she has for our son? Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Batiste. Good evening, welcome.
So I'm here today also to strongly encourage you that if you as a board have the ability and the power to retain the district's best teachers, to do what you can to retain Jenny Karani. She is an excellent teacher. She has made my child into a child who says things like, I am a reader, I am good at math. He went into a store the other day and asked the store clerk if they had Malagasy. And I like, what? And he's like, oh, Mama, that is a donut-like cake they serve in Madagascar. My child loves, he thinks about his homework now because he doesn't want to disappoint the teacher that he so loves and respects. He makes plans for it. And this is a teacher who gave him a special notebook when she saw that he likes to draw and to write stories. And he identifies himself as someone who does that. And this is all because of Jenny. And Jenny is more than that. Pioneer's everybody thinks their school is a special environment, but a bilingual environment that has a multicultural approach is very special, but it also has its challenges. Language differences, cultural differences. It's hard to maintain a strong community. And our teachers are our linchpins, and our very best ones strengthen our community through their investments in our families and in our students, and they do it with love and intelligence and affection, and Jenny does that. And I can't imagine this school without her. So I beg you, please, if you can, and I think you can, you're the board, do something to keep Jenny in Pioneer. Let us keep her. Don't do us a disservice. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Costello is our next speaker. Mr. Costello, good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Once again, my name is Sean Costello. Professionally, I'm a high school social studies teacher with an ESL endorsement, but personally, I'm the father of 2 daughters. Excuse me. At Escuela Bilingual Pioneer. My wife and I chose to move our family to Lafayette a little over 4 years ago for a number of reasons, but one of the bigger reasons was hopefully to give our kids the opportunity of a bilingual education at Pioneer. I know this board, superintendent, and Pioneer's principal cannot speak on personnel issues, but I was extremely troubled today to learn of the non-renewal of Jenny Korani. Apologize. Miss Jenny is my daughter Annabelle's 2nd grade teacher. I can tell you she's an amazing teacher. I watched her work with children firsthand as I've been in the classroom, as a guest speaker, and on field trips with the class. More importantly, I've seen the growth in my child. While helping Annabelle move from a kindergarten reading level to the 2nd grade level in 7 months is impressive enough, my daughter's attitude towards school and her work ethic have blown my mind this year. Last year, it was a fight to get her to read. Now she loves it. Her math, too. Annabelle wants to give her best, and I attribute that to Jenny's leadership. And that is what I'm looking for now, leadership. If BVSD is the best district in the state like we believe it is, if Pioneer is a great school like we believe it is, why would we let go of Jenny when we know she is a great teacher? She's a 3rd-year teacher who wants to grow, wants to be better. Where's the leadership to guide her? We as a community have invested time, money, and resources in her. Why would we throw that away now? Why do we test the open market, hire an unknown, when we have a great teacher in the classroom now? If Miss Jenny is non-renewed, I really have to question the leadership of the principal. I ask Ms. Kristen Nelson-Steinhoff, this board, and Dr. Messenger to reevaluate this decision and retain this great teacher. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Teresa Stetz. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. I have 2 kids at Pioneer. We have just finished our best year we have had there. I've been there since 2011. My kids are Sophie in Jenny's class and Isaac in Natalia Salata's class. You've heard about Jenny, and I could go on for 20 minutes, but everything everybody said, totally I agree with. I've seen amazing social emotional growth in my daughter that is blowing me away. I want to talk a little bit about Natalia, though, and my son, Isaac. Isaac is a very bright child, but he has always been lukewarm to school. It has been a struggle to get him to go to school every day. He's smart, but he'd rather take apart and put back together the laptop computers at my house. He has never really seen a use for school. He's compliant, though. He's gone to school. He's been in many of the teachers in this room's classes, and he doesn't like to get in trouble, so he's kept his head down and worked. Getting to do homework or anything beyond that or enjoy the learning, it just wasn't happening, and I've always just thought that was him. Everything changed this year. Everything. Natalia Salata has done something in the classroom to turn my son into a learner that loves to learn inside of a school setting. So to see this change now and to realize that school doesn't have to be a struggle has been amazing for me. He loves math. He never loved math. It is his favorite subject now. He races home. He doesn't race home, but he comes home and does his homework with us, explains to us how it relates to Common Core and why Common Core is a better way to learn it like this. He loves it. He internalizes everything, and he tells me it's because the way Natalia teaches it. Everything she teaches, he says, is a game or a way. He can understand it better now, and he loves it. He searches for it. If you have a chance to renew her and Jenny, please, if there's any way to stop it. I know it's late in the game, but we never got to tell you these things, and I had no idea I needed to. These are amazing teachers. Please.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Susan Daly. Ms. Daly? Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My name is Susan Daly, and I'm a teacher at Pioneer. Later on tonight, you, the board, will be asked to adopt a resolution for non-renewal of contract. I'm here tonight to urge you not to, specifically as it relates to Natalia Salata and Jenny Karani of Pioneer Elementary. I ask that you please just take some time for further review of the matter. You have the opportunity here tonight to prevent a mistake which will have a lasting negative impact on our school, our community, and our students. Both Natalia and Jenny were informed 12 days ago that the reason they are being recommended for non-renewal is because they lack a culturally and linguistically diverse education endorsement. This endorsement was not required when they were hired, nor was it required when their contracts were renewed 2 years in a row. Neither of the teachers were told verbally or in writing during their 2.5 years at Pioneer that this endorsement was required in order for them to retain their positions, not by an induction mentor, not by the administration, and not by HR. Clearly something went wrong, a mistake, an oversight, I'm not sure, but Jenny and Natalia deserve the opportunity to continue teaching at Pioneer and earn their endorsements within a reasonable time frame. Both of these teachers are well-liked, extraordinarily bilingual, and dedicated Latina educators. Our staff and parent community is shocked and bewildered that we would lose these excellent teachers. Most concerning is the impact this will have on our students. Losing 2 talented, bilingual, bicultural, accomplished teachers will leave a gaping hole in our instructional team, which we know will be very hard to fill. As part of the BVSD Success Effect, we as a district are dedicated to hire and retain a diverse community of educators. We are dedicated to hire and retain a high quality of talent that drives lifelong success of our students. And yet, unless you intervene, 2 very talented teachers will be lost. What a shame when such a simple solution is available. Please take pause to consider whether the non-renewal is the best thing for our kids. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anna Villachica. Good evening. Welcome.
So my name is Jessica Sorley. I'm next on the list because we were going to go together. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. It's the same thing. Sorry. So I am a teacher at Pioneer Elementary, and also my son is in Jenny Karani's second grade classroom. And
And I'm a colleague of Jenny's as well.
And we have a letter here from parents and teachers that we would like to read to you. Dear BVSD School Board and Superintendent Messenger, we are from Escuela Bilingüe Pioneer. One of our probationary teachers, Jenny Karani, has been notified that she will not be rehired for the 2016-2017 year, apparently because she does not have her ELD endorsement. Please reconsider renewing her position. We are really concerned about losing Jenny Karani as a member of our staff. She is an excellent second grade teacher. Jenny fills so many positive roles in our school, which we have listed below. Incredible teacher and role model, works to create a caring classroom environment, creates community in and outside of her classroom, extremely organized and resourceful teacher, uses strategies to reach second language learners in all content areas, incredible work ethic.
She's concerned about each student in her classroom. She deals with very difficult students calmly and with dignity and holds them accountable, engages all students in her class by understanding students' needs, loves to learn and do better for her students and make herself a better teacher. She's a rich native speaker with a rich Spanish vocabulary, actively participates in school-wide activities. She has positive relationships with staff, her secondary team, and as you can see, the parents behind us. She's a completely dedicated teacher who always steps in and does what is needed to make our school a better place. Jenny always thinks of children first. It is extremely difficult to find and retain excellent qualified bilingual teachers in BVSD. It would be a great loss to our school and our entire BVSD community to lose Jenny Karani.
Sincerely, parents and staff of Escuela Bilingüe Pioneer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I?
Our next speaker is Cliff Wilming. Mr. Wilming, good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm just going to read a letter that I sent the board, but I'd like to enter it into public comment. It says, to the board of the Boulder Valley School District, my name is Cliff Wilming, father of second grade Pioneer student Sasha Wilming. I'm writing to express my extreme disagreement with the decision to not allow my daughter's teacher, Jenny, back as an educator in the fall of 2016. Jenny has been an incredible and profound influence on both Sasha and her parents. She is a teacher with wonderful energy, conscientious organization, and a thorough and motivated academic approach, and a warm and profoundly caring nature. Her communication skills and enthusiasm for her work are simply too strong and notable for description, and my daughter has excelled in every way as a young person and student in her classroom. This is a decision that is wrong from every perspective. Parents were never consulted a single time regarding our impression of Jenny, and we had to hear about the decision third hand. Our daughter Sasha is still not aware of the matter because the moment she finds out, she'll be deeply heartbroken. Given the confidence and enormous appreciation I have for Jenny as a teacher, the unclear method of removing her from the school without the knowledge of the parents and the students, and the impression that people of her caliber are not welcome in Pioneer, I have serious concern for both the decision itself and whatever individual or body of individuals the decision came from. This fosters an environment of both disappointment and distrust that will affect staff, parents, and students. It is a decision that you should not support. My family moved to Lafayette because of Pioneer, for its healthy environment, its warm culture, the enormous quality, dedicated, and deeply caring teachers. Jenny embodies all of those qualities, and I could not imagine having a better person to educate my daughter in second grade. Please do not support the decision to remove Jenny from Pioneer. It would be damaging in too many ways and remove one of the best instructors we could hope for and who should be there to teach Sasha's younger brother, Charlie, when he reaches second grade. Thank you.
Thank you. Pamela Kemp is our next speaker. Ms. Kemp. Hi, welcome.
So, hi, my name is Pamela Kemp, and I'm here to advocate for two teachers from Pioneer Elementary. One of them is Natalia Salata, a fourth grade teacher. My son, Nico, is a fourth grader in Pioneer Elementary. When the school year started, my son had no interest at all in math, not whatsoever. But Natalia was able to motivate Nico. She spoke to me and to my husband, and she told us about the struggles that she observed in Nico. And she said that working together, we were going to be able to help him. Now, Nico is at grade level in math. He's doing wonderful, and he actually comes home, and he's eager to do his math problems. He's eager to learn, and he wants to know more about math. And that really, I have to thank Natalia for that, because she's the one who encouraged that on him. The second teacher is Jenny, who is here. And I just want to start saying that I never had the honor of having Jenny teach my kids, because my daughter is in kindergarten right now, and Nico started Pioneer in third grade. But I was the community liaison at Pioneer for 4 years. And in those 4 years, I was able to observe how wonderful and caring Jenny is as a person and as a teacher. I saw that as a teacher, she gives 100% of herself to her students. I saw every time I walked by her classroom, which was next to the cafeteria, so very chaotic area. But I always saw how happy her children were and how eager to learn every time they were with Jenny. I also saw something that to me is what really makes an educator, and it's that Jenny not only communicates and is able to connect with the children, but Jenny is able to connect with the families. And to me, that is actually the key to make a child successful in education. So I really hope that you, the board, can give my daughter Sophia the opportunity that when she reaches second grade, that she could have Jenny as her teacher, because she is fantastic, fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mary Wilming. Ms. Wilming? Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. So I'm also here on behalf of Jenny Karani. My daughter Sasha is in her class this year, but I met Jenny in 2013 when my daughter was in kindergarten. I worked as a sub in BVSD and had the chance to step into her shoes and be in her classroom. And I was so impressed with how organized she was and how her classroom was really just such a caring community. I knew at that time I wanted my daughter to be in her class. And so this year we've been so fortunate that she has been in there, and I've really seen my daughter grow and thrive. My daughter also is not enthusiastic about doing homework, getting places on time, but this year that's changed, and it's because of Jenny. It's because she cares about making the right choices and doing the right thing. That's the impact and the influence that Jenny has had on my daughter. And that to me is, again, like really just a key. When you can teach students how to be responsible for themselves, taking that personal responsibility in the work that they do, in how they treat other people, and how they act as a community, that's something special. That's something that's special that Jenny has. And I've seen her do it with classes for the last 2 years. And here she is again. So the district really can't afford to lose a teacher as high quality as Jenny. I also request that it's reconsidered. It would be too big of a loss to the school and to the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jenny Cornet.
Hi, I'm Jenny.
Welcome.
Hi. I wrote all this, but to be honest, I'm very nervous, so I'm not sure I can read it. I just wanted to be here because all these people are so amazingly here for me. So it would not be okay if I'm not here when they are stepping up on my behalf. I'm a third-year teacher at Pioneer. I was hired as a first-time teacher ever. I was in IT for over 14 years and always wanted to become a teacher. So I finally pursued my passion and became a teacher and was hired at Pioneer. When I was hired, it was not a requirement to have an ELD endorsement. I've come to learn now that this is a possible requirement. Unfortunately, this information was not provided to me. I was highly encouraged throughout the years that it would be good for my growth, and I agreed. But I wanted to take my time because I was a brand new teacher and I didn't want to embark into such an effort without first dedicating my time on becoming the best teacher I could in the classroom. All I'm asking is to be given the chance to continue to serve my children, our community, our district, and our leaders at my school. I'm happy to enroll into a program right now and begin the process to get what is required from an endorsement perspective. But I know I can continue to do my work. So if other teachers will be given the chance outside, be hired, and be given the chance, all I'm asking is to be given the same chance. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Fred Gabriel. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. This is an odd way to be spending supper. You guys don't have any burgers up there, would you? Nobody? I don't have any prepared remarks. I guess I would just say respectfully that any organization or individual who cares about education and who thinks that our educators should be inspiring and bright and kind would be, I think, to let Jenny go, as we say back home, would be too dumb to tell wet from windy. I think it's a terrible mistake.
Thank you, sir. We'll move now to our speakers on non-agenda items. Kevin Brainey. Kevin Brainey. Not present. Moving to Anna Pasnow. Good evening, welcome.
Hi, my name is Anna Pasnow. I'm a senior at Boulder High School and the president of the Boulder High Opportunity Club. I'm here today to talk about AP classes, and specifically AP tests. AP classes are an integral part of the Boulder High curriculum. In taking them, students are exposed to a more advanced class in their topic of interest, be it calculus, U.S. history, or music theory. Not only do AP classes teach students substantially more than the regular classes, but they also prepare students for college academic expectations and can even provide significant college credit. For example, CU provides 11 credits to students who score a 5 on the AP Spanish language test. That's thousands of dollars in tuition on a test that no Boulder High student has failed in years. Unfortunately, AP tests are expensive and considered an integral part of the classes. As my AP literature teacher told me, the test is a part of the class. The test is the class. At $89 per test, they are not cheap for anyone, and students that qualify for free or reduced lunch still have to pay over $50 per test. This extreme cost discourages many students from taking the class and reaping the benefits of a more advanced understanding in their topic of interest. It also hurts the whole school, from classes that lack in different perspectives for their discussions to a school-wide social scene that's devastatingly divided by race and economic status. Boulder High feels the effects of the cost of AP tests every day. If BVSD truly wants to become an equal opportunity school district, it needs to make AP tests free for students with financial need. Everyone in BVSD should have the right to learn, no matter their income bracket. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tegan O'Connor. Oh, hello, Tegan. Yeah.
This is my 7-year-old daughter.
I have a stool. Would it help if I brought a stool up for her?
Yeah, that might help.
Thanks, Jenny.
We'd like to be able to see.
Yeah.
I still can't.
Appreciate that.
I think she's a little shy. She's 7 years old.
That's okay. Well, Tegan, we're glad you're here tonight, and perhaps we can move to the next person on our agenda if you feeling a little shy. Okay.
Yeah, that's my daughter. I'm Andrew O'Connor.
Well, you're up next, Mr. O'Connor, so
No.
your time starts now. Welcome.
Thank you. What she was going to tell you is that I'm her dad, and she wants me to be able to walk her to school. I've not been able to walk her to school since September 22nd, and we have 6 weeks left in school. So I'm asking the school board if they would consider letting me walk my daughter to school. I have to say that I don't agree with some of the speakers that came before me. I don't think BVSD is the best school district in Colorado. Far from it. And last time I was here, Bruce Messenger had the police here, knowing I was coming in advance to intimidate me. And I know this because I got emails in my lawsuit, and you have handouts. Okay, this is a nasty guy. And I want you to consider firing this guy because he is incompetent. He is not a good supervisor. He's not a good superintendent, and he's unethical. Okay? And I'm upset, and I'm angry. And this man is incompetent, and I'd like you to consider terminating him, or he should resign. He is a nasty guy, and he's unethical.
And that concludes public participation for this evening. Next item on our agenda is board communication. Board members, who would like to begin? Anybody have anything to say? Richard?
I want to start with the DAC meeting first, okay, because I think and then I want to go into other stuff that I just heard tonight. But in reference to the DAC meeting that I attended last Tuesday night, It was a small but mighty group of DAC members that were there, and they talked about two things. One was the privacy policy that we're considering, and the other one is the graduation requirements. They had a couple of facilitators that were guiding them through the discussion of both the privacy policy as well as the graduation requirements. They're going to be giving us a report later on in terms of all of the stuff that they discussed, but I'd like to touch on a few highlights, if I may, just in terms of the privacy policy. One of the things that the facilitators guided them through in terms is they asked questions like, what would be your best hopes of data privacy, for example, was a question that was asked. And people were able to respond based on their tables because they were working in small groups, et cetera. And one of the best hopes that I heard was rarely reviewed out of necessity. Another one was obviously protect student data, insight to improve student outcomes. Vendors will be audited, and how are they going to be audited was a question that they had. And then it would provide for good transparency, good education, et cetera. And then they were thinking that maybe that particular policy should be piloted. Okay, so that's just some highlights in terms of that one particular discussion that they had. Then they wanted to know, as I mentioned earlier, what do we as board do once we get all of these wonderful suggestions and ideas from DAC? What do we do with them afterwards? And they want us to look at that and give them an answer in terms of, because they're doing a lot of work, and they want to know what we do with the information that they provide to us. As regards to the high school graduation requirements, some of the best hopes that they were talking about was, will the graduation requirements increase graduation rates, for example, or will they decrease graduation rates? Is there any connection between the graduation requirements and ICAP? Provide a meaningful parts to graduation for all students. They wanted to know what at least a couple of DAC members wanted to know what what is that called? The one of the requirements for graduation, capstone project. There you go. Thank you. What that would look like, and as it relates to some of the different high schools, because there's a bunch of high schools here, are they all going to be different? Is it going to be the same, et cetera? So they had a lot to talk about, and I really I need to give DAC kudos for the hard work that they do, because they go in and they're serious about the stuff they do. So I think one of the things that we should talk about is, what do we do with the information once we get it from them? And I think we ought to maybe somehow put that in a work session or something like that, but I think we need to discuss seriously what we do with that. I was always under the understanding, getting back to some of the stuff that I heard tonight, that low-income kids receive financial assistance for almost anything that they need here in this district. And I was surprised to hear that AP classes aren't doing that.
They do.
Okay, so maybe that needs to be straightened out in terms of information provided to the speaker that just spoke. And then the other item that I'm really concerned about in general is the retention of teachers of color. And I'm just going to say that and leave it the way it is, okay? I'm just going to say that we need to start looking at how are we retaining teachers of color, and have some serious discussion on that based on what I heard tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Other board members? Tina?
Just a quick question. Do we vote on the UIP? Do we? Okay, because I didn't see it in agenda setting, but okay.
Thanks, Sam. I want to thank everybody for coming and sharing your stories and your emotions. I know that has to be hard on all of you, and I have to tell you that we all listen and take seriously everything that you have to say. So thank you very much for coming. And it just goes to show how important the community is and all of the support that you give to each other. So thank you for being here. I was going to report on, it's been a while since we've met. As Bruce said, we had spring vacation and then we had a special board meeting, and I was going to report on, I've been to a ton of conferences, it feels like, but it just doesn't feel appropriate to do it right now. So I think that maybe I'll do it at the next board meeting. So I'll talk about it then, but
All right.
thanks.
Yep. Other comments, board members? Shelley? Or-
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone who came to speak on behalf of the teachers at Pioneer. As you probably understand, we can't talk about personnel matters, but, and I know that's really frustrating for you. It's frustrating for us as well. So, but I think you're doing the right thing by coming and sharing your feelings about that, and I know it means a lot to the teachers. So I want to thank you all for coming and doing that. I also want to thank the student from Boulder High School who came to talk about AP tests. I know we do subsidize those tests, but it brings up a question for me that actually somebody just asked me yesterday, which is when you have a school like Boulder High that has a fair amount of kids who need help, financial help, then a lot of subsidizing goes on there for not just AP tests, but for a lot of other fees. And so I had a parent telling me just yesterday how diminished activities are becoming at Boulder High because so much extra money is needed to subsidize the fees for art classes and for various other activities. So I'd just like to talk about how we make that work for a school that has a higher FRL population. So maybe that's just educating me, or I'm not sure if that's an agenda item. Maybe it is. But this was of real concern. This person went through several cases where she just felt like classes could no longer do the things they used to be doing. And one of the examples she gave was catering, that they used to have, fairly elaborate things that they created in catering class. And now they're making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because they don't have the money to buy the food that they need to teach the way they used to. So I think we need to look at that, because I don't think Boulder High is probably the only school that's being affected. So I wanted to thank the student from Boulder High for bringing that up. I also wanted to thank Mr. O'Connor for coming forward and sharing his thoughts. And I wanted to let you know that I attended the hearings yesterday in Denver on student data privacy. And it was an interesting meeting. And I know that Chalkbeat had its report that was forwarded to all of us. But if you don't mind, I'd like to share a few of my own observations from the hearing. Representatives Lundeen and Garnett presented the bill. And they talked about the origins of the bill, which are basically that the federal laws protecting student privacy have not kept up with the kind of technology that is going on now. And therefore, states are required to take up the slack and create their own laws. So the goals of these bills were, this bill is to increase transparency about who collects data and why, and to provide more access for parents who want to know what data is being shared and with who, and to prohibit personal information from being sold, used for advertising, or used to profile individual students in a way that could come back to haunt them. And that was the discussion that I thought was pretty interesting. I actually learned a lot about how technology companies do that. So right now, what we're allowed to share is this aggregated data. But then what they do is they aggregate it, and they can come up with who the student is. And if they find out who the student is that way, the privacy laws don't cover it right now. It's not treated as PII, or personally identifiable information. So now with this bill, If the data alone or in combination lets you identify the student, then that's called PII, and that data is not allowed. So that's a pretty big shift in how PII is viewed. Also, the law now says that we need to delete data, like at CDE and also with contractors. But in fact, that data isn't actually deleted. It lives on forever. The only thing that happens is the address of the person is deleted or severed, they say, but not the data. So right now, the data lives on forever. And this bill is going to say that it needs to be destroyed, absolutely destroyed. So it will be completely irretrievable by anyone. So the proponents of the bill, they express their belief that these kinds of protections would foster more trust with parents and therefore result in more innovation, not less, because the software industry argues the opposite, that the more controls you put on, privacy, the less privacy restrictions there are, the more innovative they can be. And Garnett and Lundin argue that that's just the opposite. So there were some questions from the committee, but it was obvious from the questions and from all the people who testified in support of the bill that this is very popular legislation. Andrew Moore was there. He spoke in support of the bill on behalf of CASE, and he expressed some logistical concerns that he was confident the district could work out in time. Only one person had serious opposition, and he was from the Software Industry Association. And his concerns were pretty well dismissed by, I would say, everyone there. This is just really interesting, and I wanted to share this with you because I did not know this. One of the parents there made the point that we don't actually know what data is being collected, and that vendors are collecting behavioral, social, emotional learning data via keystrokes on computers, including Chromebooks. So she quoted a Wall Street Journal article that describes a keystroke algorithm that collects information on up to 15 emotional states as the kid is typing into the computer. And that those keystroke algorithms start collecting information whenever a child logs online. And these hidden algorithms are called web scraping in the industry. And future employers of these children are hiring data brokers that take that information and predict things like how many sick days this child is likely to call in when they're older, and whether a girl is likely to become pregnant and need pregnancy leave. And that's how sophisticated these data people are in mining that information. So obviously that data can be used against children, and this bill does not cover that data. And that's what this parent wanted us to know, that as good as it is in terms of a first step, it doesn't go all the way in protecting our children. So the reason I wanted to share that with you is because we're about to adopt a privacy policy ourselves, and we have an opportunity to cover those instances where that might be the case. So I wanted to bring that up. I think that's the highlight. Those are the highlights. It passed 11-0 out of the hearing, and everyone seemed to think that it would have a lot of bipartisan support and would pass in both houses. So.
Thank you for the report. Is that it, Shelley?
Yeah.
Okay, Jenny?
So is it all right if I ask Richard a couple of questions about the DAC meeting?
I think so.
Richard, so thank you for bringing back that report. It was very helpful and complete. And I just wondered, you said something about suggestion that we pilot the privacy policy. What, do you understand what they meant by that?
That was a comment they made.
Okay,
Would
yeah.
it be best to pilot the, we'd have to ask them that question.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
I didn't
maybe,
ask them the
maybe you
question.
could, maybe, yeah. Okay, and then, and I'd just like to provide a partial answer in lieu of a board work session, which we may or may not do later, about what I personally do with the information that DAC brings forward. So for example, they brought back some really helpful information on budget recommendations, which I will certainly use to inform my thinking as we do a budget work session next week, I believe. And so there's not always a direct line between what they bring forward and what I do, but it does help me. I mean, the information is really helpful, you can tell them, and it does help inform my my consideration of the issues that come before us. And I consider them a very highly informed and engaged parent group, so I may even give the recommendations and the information they bring forward a little extra weight, because I know that they've really taken time to dig into the issues. So that's my answer to that question. I'd like to thank our speakers for coming out tonight. Again, you've heard we really can't address, but I certainly appreciate all the concerns that have been raised. And I'd like to shout out, first of all, to Emerald Elementary in Broomfield, which was recently named a No Place for Hate school by the Anti-Defamation League. I'm very proud of them. And I know they're very proud of the work they do there. It's a great school. We have other great schools too, but and they probably all deserve that recommendation, that recognition, but I'm particularly glad that Emerald achieved that. And then I'd like to mention that we got an email today, that CASB is going to be hosting a forum on June the 17th for school districts. It's an opportunity to discuss modifications at the state level, or opportunities at the state level to seek modifications to the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And so I'm hoping that we will send a team to that. I've talked to Kathy. I know it's going to be a little, she would be an ideal board member to attend, and I would too, but I don't think Kathy can, and my daughter is getting married the next week, so I'm not sure that I can promise to attend either. But I hope we can come up with. I hope there'll be a board member and some other district staff that will plan to attend that. Bruce, that's just my personal recommendation. And then I'd like to give a shout out to the classroom of Andrea Cipoletti, who's a 6th grade teacher at Aspen Creek. She invited me to, you know her? Yeah, she's great. And she invited me to come to her class. She teaches a 6th grade class on leadership, and she asked me to present to her 6th grade leadership classes, 4 of them, back to back to back to back to back, about a week ago. And I have to say, I really had a good time. I think the future is in good hands. They were great kids, and they asked good questions. I was able to blame you for the snow day policy, Bruce, as 4 different classes asked me if that was my fault, and I said, no, let me tell you how we do that. And so, anyway, and I, not, in addition to really enjoying the opportunity, I came away with a newfound admiration for the work that all of our teachers do in school. I have to tell you that I went home and took a nap. I was exhausted, and I don't think that that's what Andrea did when she went home. So, and I don't think that's what most teachers do when they go home. They don't necessarily have that opportunity. So, again, a real admiration for the mentally and physically demanding work that our teachers do. Don't ever let anybody tell you different. And then I also had an opportunity to tour Ryan Elementary last week. As some of you may know, I volunteer over there 1 day a week. I read with 4th graders this year. Same teacher I used to read with 2nd graders at Sanchez, and I now read with 4th graders at Ryan. And so the principal there was kind enough to show me the great work that's being done at Ryan Elementary, another school that we can really be proud of. And that is all. I have a few more comments when we do our legislative update, but that's it for now.
Thanks, Jenny. Kathy, you have an additional comment?
Well, as Jenny said, the upcoming CASB CEA case, ESSA, I don't know what they're calling it yet, is coming up. It's not, I don't think, so much as to modify, but to try to figure out parental involvement. And the one thing I will say at the various conferences, which was the American Education Research Association conference, which had 17,000 people at it. I don't think I've been to a conference that big in a long time. They had to have crossing guards to get people in and out of the convention. And the American Education Finance Policy and the Schenker Institute were all conferences that I went to, and ESSA is the hot topic. And what I worry about is that we will let this opportunity pass us by without jumping on it enough, and I think, Richard, you probably will feel this as well, all of you will, to make sure that we have community and parent involvement and engagement starting now, because they're working on rulemaking, as Bruce knows, and this is gonna go pretty quickly, and so there's a lot of opportunity. I would say that was the overarching feeling, is that this is an opportunity and a possibility that we haven't had that will shape our education for decades to come. And so I just want to encourage all of us that when we see these opportunities, that we take advantage of them, and that we work really hard as a district and a board to make sure that we have more opportunities to engage our community and our parents around these issues, because I do think that this will be really important in shaping. We had No Child Left Behind, even with all of its iterations and things that we knew were bad. We had it for well over a decade. So this is really important policy to be paying attention to. So thank you, Jenny, for reminding us about that.
Thanks, Kathy. I'll just add my appreciation to the folks who spoke. Anna, the student from Boulder High, I don't know if you're still here, but you know, my kids benefited from financial assistance for AP tests when they were at Boulder High, and so I appreciate that the money is there, but I agree we could do more to encourage that and make it easier for students to be in the AP tests. I appreciate the heartfelt comments about your teachers at Pioneer from the parents, and I appreciate the teachers for all you do for the students. So I just share my appreciation in that way, and that's what we can say. But it did remind me, Jenny, you know, we were at a thing about a month ago with Dr. Messenger at the LDS Church, right, on South Boulder Road. They do an event where they have some students who are members of that congregation appreciate an individual teacher who has made an impact in their lives. And, you know, it was everything from elementary school teachers on up to high school. Both Boulder Valley students and teachers and St. Vrain were represented, and it was, you know, I was moved by it, much like I was tonight, because the students very intentional in their comments about the difference that and that teacher had made in their lives, and it was a reminder to me of the powerful impact that they make, and I wish more organizations did that, actually. So a kudo to that church for that what is an annual event. Yeah, and I think with that, we'll wrap up board communication and move to the next items on our agenda. We have some information items. The first is a legislative update. Dr. Messenger?
Well, I would just start by building on Board Member Benford's comments regarding the student data privacy legislation. We've kind of kept this in front of us for a couple of years. You have a pending policy which DAC will comment on in early May, and it'll be back on your agenda in May for consideration, kind of a second or third time we've worked on this policy. The timing of that is such that we think that we'll know where we are with the legislature with this particular pending legislation. It does appear it's got a lot of bipartisan support. Again, I know a piece of legislation like policy is perfect, but we think this moves it a long ways in the correct direction. Again, a lot of fingerprints on this, and I appreciate the two legislators that have worked many, many hours on this, as well as lobbyists and staff. So anyway, I think what we said from the beginning is trying to find that right balance of providing protection and also maintaining the utility of data around for students, teachers, and schools. So again, this probably isn't perfect, but we think it's moving in the right direction. This in combination of what's happening at local policy as well as at the federal level. Representative Jared Polis and others continue to work on this at the federal level. Several of us were in the audience with Jared Polis a year or so ago, and he said this is not something that will be addressed only at the federal level. It really does need state and local commitment to it as well. So I think he's right about that, and I think this is a big step. The other piece of legislation we've been working on is anticipated charter school legislation coming into this session. I shared with you a week or so ago some comments that I made on this in my role as president-elect for the Colorado Association of School Executives. I think that some of what's being proposed would be better dealt with at the local level. One of the challenges we have with any legislation dictated from state legislatures, the shoe doesn't always fit every occasion, and we've been successful, I believe, not perfect, but successful over time of finding that right balance of funding for our charters through mill levies and bond issues, and also our ongoing contracts with them. We understand that this doesn't cut across the whole state. There are differences between community. I do think that some of the conversation in BVSD serving as a model that this can be done in a harmonious way and done in collaboration. The one comment that I have made publicly is that every school district only has one elected board, and that would be you in this case. We have other boards for charters, but they're not elected. They're not elected by the community. So the stewards of the dollars, the tax dollars, and the resources, I think, belong in this boardroom and with the voters. And so I think that's why I would advocate to continue the policy that we have in our state and letting local school districts work through that. It won't be easy at times, and it may be different between districts, but ultimately you are the elected board, and that's true. And our charters are authorized locally, not at the state level, and I think it's particularly important with district authorized charters that's where we are. So anyway, our Colorado Association of School Executives has been pretty active in this conversation. This will be a partisan battle, I'm pretty sure. So my understanding is it gets to the Senate soon. So anyway, but that's one we've continued to work on. Probably there's compromise in there somewhere. We'll see where it goes. Then finally, I testified a week or so ago around the hospital provider fee and really an ongoing effort to provide increased funding for schools and adequate funding, and don't know that this will be the solution that'll make its way through this session, but what we heard in that many hour-long hearing was that it seems that there's a bipartisan understanding that we've got some problems around tax policy in the state, and the consequence of that is underfunding of many public services, including public education. So good testimony in that hearing. There's likely to be, as you know, a ballot initiative that we'll have a chance to vote on in the fall that will begin to maybe unwind this complex knot that we have around tax policy and inadequate funding for public services in our state. A week from tonight, we'll be in a work session to work on our own budget, anticipating what that will look like for the 16-17 school year. So I think I'll pause there, Sam. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I know many of you are also involved in these legislative issues and attending hearings and giving comment as well.
Thank you, Dr. Messenger. Kathy?
On the privacy bill, was there any discussion about the impact that this bill would have on researchers and their access to data? I know that in these conferences I've been to, there's some concern about that. And I hear and I understand the protection and that you need the data for school districts, but I haven't heard any discussion about what that would do for researchers' ability to do their research. Has that discussion come up, and is that a...
Well, I'm sure it has come up. We have weighed in on this because of, I think, again, I would advocate that there's a place for this, and it really is how much of it needs to be personally identifiable. Most of it doesn't. It can be in group data or disaggregated by characteristics. I understand what Shelley said earlier about some concerns about walking that data backwards. I think appropriate safeguards can be made there. I think the one thing that most research institutions do, including CU Boulder, is that there are appropriate panels for review of those requests for research. So, and there are other organizations like CDC and others outside of just post-secondary ed who had interest in this. Again, I think that's trying to find that right balance of giving appropriate protections, but also not closing the door, because some of that scaled group research and analysis can be very helpful, but most of it does not need to be personally identifiable.
Do you know if they've weighed in on this bill?
I don't know
Institutions,
if they testified. I wasn't there on Monday, or other post-secondary or other research institutions testified.
No, they weren't there, but this issue was addressed, and the committee and also the sponsors of the bill addressed how really what Bruce said is true, that there's very little need for this personal information when you're doing research. And so they didn't think that this was going to impact negatively anybody doing research. And they specifically said that it was very important for parents to understand that vendors and researchers use this data and which ones are using this data. So you will be able, as a parent, to know who's doing research with your child's data, which I think is good, and I don't think it should prohibit the researchers from doing their job at all, from what I understand.
I just hadn't heard that, so I was just wanting to follow up. That was my sense, Shelley, is there really isn't any reason for needing the personally identifiable information, but, kind of the back chatter is, what is this going to do to our ability to be doing research? And I think everybody agrees that data privacy is the most important thing, but still access to data is going to be important for the researching. So thank you for going to that and sharing that information. And Bruce, if you had to handicap it, hospital provider fee?
Oh, I think there's still major concern that it'll make its way through the chambers. But I think, like other pieces of legislation, sometimes the dialogue has great value. And I think I think we're, slowly moving down the path of an appreciation as a state that we're in a mess and we need to work on it. Again, this may not be the right solution for all parties, but I think the conversation has been good. The testimony was pretty powerful. No opposition to it in hearing. Yes, in the House. I mean, the voted opposition, but not testimonial opposition.
Okay. Tina?
Similar question. How do you think the charter bill is being received when you hear conversations about that? Does it seem likely that something will pass?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm not sure I know how it's going to play out. I think it's going to require some compromise if it's going to make it through. I mean, this has some bipartisan support because of Denver's involvement with it, but I think that there's also some pretty significant concerns. So I would say it's still very much at play, very much at play.
Is there a provision in the bill that if it were to mandate equitable funding of overrides and bonds, that the schools' makeup of students with risk factors would have to mirror those of the district?
It's not a requirement.
Is that something we could work on?
The state had that at one time and doesn't anymore. So that's when charter schools initially started. They needed to reflect the district of which they came from. And unfortunately, that's been gone for a long time.
Is that something
I think it's an argument to make. Certainly, we have made it. It was actually some of the dialogue that went back and forth. I think it's a non-starter, unfortunately. And that ship has sailed, which is a shame.
Okay, it might just be something to think about as this progresses. And I think we're, in general, I spoke to Jessica Johnson about the bill, and she said, she was using a lot of statistics that talked about how charter schools in general do represent the makeup of the state when it comes to at-risk kids in terms of poverty and race. But not every district is like that. Not every charter is like that. If there's any way that we can give some flexibility around that so we know that we have the funding to serve our low-income and kids of color, then I think that would be a really good thing.
Richard?
Yeah, I guess my question would be is the charter school law, the original one, when was that revised? I mean, to exclude that language from there?
I don't know that I recall when it was. When I left the state, it was still there. It was gone when I came back. So I don't know. Somewhere in that 14 years, it changed.
I think we need to find that out in terms of. I see. What?
2004. So, a long time ago.
Do you remember can I ask Briggs a question from you? Since he volunteered?
It's up to Dr. Messenger.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Messenger.
Well, I guess if it's relevant, yeah, it brings that up.
There's not really a long answer. It's just when the legislation came up in 2004, the current charter legislation by Senator Groff and Speaker Carroll, it wasn't there. I mean, they rewrote the charter law at that time and created the Charter School Institute.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the legislative update? Jenny, go ahead.
So, let's see. I think in lieu of the fact that it looks like there's going to be a ballot initiative, that language has been filed with the Secretary of State, is that right? It might be, and I know some of our schools are asking for presentations from Great Ed Colorado because I've been contacted to do one. So if we could get some legal advice maybe on whether there are any legal implications on that, that would be helpful, I think. And then I know there are real concerns out there about the charter bill and especially the funding implications, especially for mill levy money that's already been allocated and voted on by voters, being used for purposes that voters didn't approve, among another, and there are local control issues. I've been reading about a Republican concept called subsidiarity, which is basically local control, that the smallest and most local level of government that can handle an issue should be the level of government that handles that issue. And So I'm hoping that if Paul Ryan thinks it's a good idea, that maybe some of our Republican legislators in the State House will think it's a good idea as well, and let our locally controlled boards deal with our charters. I think if Boulder Valley can get along with its charters, then anybody can get along with their charters. So that I'm really concerned about that. And then, let's see, and I'd like to thank you and Andrew for working with the legislature on the privacy bill. I know there were some local control issues that were raised, but I'm assuming that we don't find those insurmountable if Case supported them. And then I'd just like to comment that if people are interested, CASB has Region 5 Day at the Capitol next Wednesday. It's not too late to register, and I'm having a little trouble detecting, unless the charter legislation drops, detecting issues that we may want to address with our legislators, except for the usual suspects that we would appreciate more funding. And so I'm going to ask about that. What does the funding picture look like, Bruce? And is there any chance of getting any more?
No, I don't think so. But I don't think it ever hurts to ask and remind them how inadequate it still is, even with this level.
Yeah, and I've concluded, even when they're not going to give us any more, I've just concluded that they ought to know they're going to have to talk about it if they see me coming, that if they're not going to fund us, they ought to at least have to talk about it with me and with anybody else who chooses to go down there and address that issue.
Kathy, you had an additional question?
I just want to echo what Tina said, but add special education to that list of issues about charter schools not really serving the population that's the same as the district. And I know it's a non-starter, and I know it's a little different issue, but I think that it's even more indefensible when you look at the special education numbers in charter schools. They're way under what the district populations are.
Shelley?
Yeah, I just like to say that I understand that sentiment completely, but I think you have to look charter school by charter school. I mean, I know my kids went to Horizons and they had a very high population of special ed students, so, and, you know, they're a charter school. So I think if we're thinking about that, we need to be very careful about any conclusions that we draw.
Any other questions for Dr. Messenger on the legislative update? If not, we can move to our next information item, which is the latest update on the success effect. Dr. Messenger?
So Assistant Superintendent Leslie Arnold is making her way to the podium. We're going to feature our work with parent-family partnerships, which is one of our pillars of our strategic plan, and she'll introduce our director in that area. So Leslie Arnold, Assistant Superintendent.
Okay. We'll just do this. All right, thank you. President Fuqua, members of the board, Dr. Messenger, I'm Leslie Arnold, Assistant Superintendent for Strategic Initiatives. And again, tonight, we are here to talk a little bit about the success effect and specifically family and parent partnerships, as well as give you an update on graduation guidelines. And some of that is what Richard has already discussed with you just a little bit earlier. So just as a reminder that as I'm coming up here, what we're really trying to do is really think about how we weave in our learning, our talent, and our partnerships, and building all that in what we're calling under the success effect and the strategic partnerships that we're creating within our own district and obviously with others as well outside of the district. And so all of this is coming together in great hopes of achieving higher student success and creating a district where people are actually very excited to work in. And so as we look at the kind of the trajectory of pieces that I've presented to you already, tonight we're really focusing on parent and family partnerships. But some of the work that we're going to talk about tonight really relates to the systems of support work, which happened back in November, which I spoke to you a little about. So I'm going to remind you a little bit about the multi-tiered systems of support and how that fits. And since I'm the representative from DAC, I'm going to add just a couple comments on that as well when I get there. So the first thing that I'd like to share with you is just to give you a brief outline and update on what the graduation guidelines
are currently. And as you know, many of you have attended one of the 7 sessions that were held. We started out slow with parents and community members joining, but we really ended, I think, very strong. And so overall, there were 217 people that actually attended one of our sessions. We did host 2 Spanish sessions to talk about the new graduation guidelines. And so a lot of questions were and suggestions were given to the team, and you're going to be getting all of those in the work session that's coming up. I think it's June 14th at 5 p.m., where once again, Rhonda Hannaford and Michelle DeBerry will be here to talk with you and to really get your feedback and to kind of give you some of that information that they've learned from the community members. With the outreach, though, it hasn't just been these community. As you know, I've been here every board meeting and trying to update you as we started what our timeline is and kind of how we're progressing through this. But there's also been student involvement in this, as well as other district groups like the District Accountability Committee and the District Parent Council. So there's other places where parents are actually and students are able to give their feedback. This June, what you will hear are the dates. Hopefully, I'm going to get these to you in May, that you can get them on your calendar. But when we come back in August, we are going to be able to have a list of the community outreach meetings for graduation guidelines that will happen at all of our middle schools. We're not going to schedule them on board meeting nights, so hopefully you'll be able to meet. I know, great, right? So hopefully you'll be able to meet, at least make one of those. And we would like to host these in the middle schools themselves with our principals from our middle schools leading the sessions with their parents and inviting our elementary principals to bring 5 families to each of these so that they're able to hear this and start spreading the word as well. We're hoping that our elementary principals will do some co-hosting on these sessions as they learn about this so that we have great articulation throughout the whole system, so it's not just confined to what our high school principals know and are talking about with their community, but what future graduates of BVSD will have to know about what they're going to need to take to graduate. So all of this is really coming at a time when we have 2 committees that are working right now. One is the capstone, and that was discussed a little bit earlier, as well as the testing. And if you remember, CDE has put out quite a few tests that are able to qualify as if a student didn't want to take or didn't get the high score on the ACT or the SAT, that they could take other tests. And we have committees now looking at each of these things as far a pathway. That doesn't mean that it's the sole thing that they can do, and there was some misunderstanding after a DAC meeting, the DAC meeting that Richard went to, that we were going to recommend having a student, maybe in 8th grade, take an ACT or an SAT or an AP class or something, and that they would be able to graduate. I can tell you that is off the table. That is not something that we're thinking about, but it is something that we are looking at. Are there other tests that maybe students could look at or to take in place of the SAT or the ACT? So all of those things will be coming to you June 14th, and that will be hopefully in the work session a lot of give and take so that you can ask your questions of the team and we can also provide you further input. So with that, and there's the upcoming middle school information, but with that I'm going to transition for this night's topic is really about the family partnerships. And when I was first hired here in BVSD, I had the honor of being on the selection committee for our Director of Parent and Family Partnerships. And so that was one of the first things that I got to do, and I'm going to be really excited to introduce you to Madeline in just a second. But the work that she has been doing this year around family and parent partnerships is really part of the strategic plan, not just in its own little Venn circle, but also under the systems of support. And part of the systems of support is this year we had, as the DAC members earlier had shared with you, we have asked that all the schools have a multi-tiered systems of support goal this year. And that goal was to really become aware of what multi-systems of support is, what kind of components are, identifying what are the areas that they're already working on. We just rolled out the new UIP goals for our principals at the last K-12 administrators meeting. And that, again, has another UIP goal for multi-tiered systems of support. And if you remember back in November, I shared with you this infographic that really talks about the multi-tiered systems of support, what parts of that kind of fit with this. And we have adopted the Colorado Department of Education's model, which talks about, at the top, shared leadership, database problem solving and decision making, the continuum of supports, evidence-based instruction, intervention, and assessment practices. Some of those things that are ahead of you on a budget decision that we put forth with common assessments, that universal screening and progress monitoring. There's also that family, school, and community partnering. And so with that work, Madeline Case has been working with our tri-chairs on the systems of support to make this a combined effort so that schools are not thinking that they step out and do family and parent partnerships, and then they come back and then they do multi-tiered systems of support. That this is all connected work, and that a lot of their groups and their committees can be doing some of the same work. So with that, this is the purpose statement for the partnership group, and with your permission, President Fuqua, I'd like to turn the rest of the presentation over to our director, Madeline Case.
Good evening. I'm Madeline Case, Director of Parent and Family Partnership. Thank you, President Fuqua and members of the board, for allowing me to provide an update tonight about the Family School Partnership Initiative under the Success Effect. I wanted to start off by just reminding us about what we talk about when we're talking about family partnership. It's really something that is encompasses more than just how many parents show up at a meeting. It really is focused in on how are we welcoming families into our schools, how we are communicating with families, and are we doing that in a way that families prefer and in the language that they prefer. How are we helping families build their skills to support student success and engaging them in classroom learning. And I think at the end of the day, what our bottom line is really how are we supporting student success through our work with families. So when I came on board in August, kind of the first steps that I took to really get to know what was already being done in the district with regards to family partnership, and the good news is there's lots of great things going on. Part of that was doing a lot of listening to parent groups, listening to internal stakeholder groups, and really understanding kind of where people were seeing both our needs as a district, but also things that we were doing well. I've been out to all 56 of our schools, including our Little Mountain communities, and just to understand from the school's perspective about what they feel like their needs are with regards to family partnership and how this initiative can support their work in building capacity in that area. I've also met with a lot of community organizations, over 50 at this point. As we know, we are not in this alone, and we will be only stronger as we partner with organizations who are already working with BVSD families out in the community. Finally, all 56 of our schools did a family partnership inventory, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to go through all of this, but really the purpose of this objective, they did this with their SACs, and it was, the purpose of this was to really get the conversation started at the school level about what practices the schools were already utilizing when it comes to family partnership and what areas they wanted to focus on in the coming years. So you can read over some of the areas of strength as well as areas of growth that schools identified, as well as some of the top goals that were identified by schools that they would like to focus on. And the reason that we did this inventory was to really find out where we needed to focus our efforts in supporting schools and building capacity for family partnership. All right, so on that note, some of the work that is underway already to build that capacity, one is how do we collaborate both internally and externally to support this work. We created a family partnership network. So this brought together one person from each of our schools who works very closely with families. And as I mentioned before, there's already lots of good things that are happening in our district, and this is a way for our staff to be able to collaborate and share ideas and develop together towards those goals. And so that's met 4 times over the past year and has had really very vibrant participation. We are also trying to connect, as Leslie mentioned, connect this to what other initiatives are going on in the district. So some collaborative work that is underway is working with our literacy department to look at how we can better work with families to support our literacy goals for kids. Another is a Latino leadership project in partnership with CARE and El Centro Amistad, which are 2 community organizations. As well as with the MTSS group, we are looking at our translation and interpretation services and going out. I've been doing lots of focus groups with families who utilize those services and listening about what sorts of areas we're doing well in and what areas we can even be better at. As well as working with our HR department and office professionals team to do a training around how do we create welcoming environments in our schools. Some things to look forward to that are coming soon. One is a family school partnership steering committee that's going to engage internal and external stakeholders to really guide this work. Another item is the Family Partnership Toolbox, which that is a link, so you're welcome to take a look at it. It's very much a prototype at this point, but as I mentioned, there's lots of great things going on, and we are trying to build out a way for schools to share their ideas so that when we are trying to replicate something good that's happening in one school at another school, we don't have to start from zero. And so that toolbox is really going to be a resource bank that schools, as they are looking at what their family partnership goals are, they have some resources to pursue those goals. And finally, we are starting a cohort of 6 to 7 schools in a project that's called Families and Educators Together in Schools. And they will be forming parent leadership teams that will be charged with focusing the school's family partnership efforts to support the UIP goals and the school's other existing goals. And as Leslie mentioned, we really want this family partnership work not to be an add-on, but really to be supporting the work and the goals that we have for our kids. Thank you.
I would just add in closing, and then if there are questions, we'd be glad to answer them, is that we see this as a significant step forward. This was, as we worked with Education Northwest over the last 2 years, worked as our part of our strategic planning process, that parent partnerships being a bigger domain, but specifically parent-family partnerships would be our initial work to build on some early successes we have, and really the networking that Madeline just described about really creating greater capacity for our students and families by making stronger linkages with nonprofits and other organizations in our community. We are blessed to have a lot of things available, and they're not necessarily all connected as well as they could be. So that's a big part of Madeline's work right now, and we look forward to that. And then I just would note that in subsequent presentations, Madeline will share with you other partnerships we're building beyond parent and family, but initially this is our work. So with that, Sam, I think if there are questions or comments, we'd be glad to respond.
Board members? Tina?
That's just such a great presentation, and it's so much work. It sounds really exciting and work that I know will benefit our students. And I was particularly glad to see also that you're looking at the live translation and interpretation services. I think I've mentioned at a board meeting that that can be really challenging for a lot of people to listen during a meeting. It can be somewhat distracting. And then I had a question, just personally as a parent who's just gone from elementary to middle school. Are you seeing unique sets of challenges at the middle school level versus the elementary school level? I don't know who I'm directing that to.
If you have perception on that, that'd be great to share.
Oh, Sam's going to answer.
Yeah, I definitely
parent.
think that that's one of the areas that transition from elementary to middle school is one of those areas that we really can focus on and figure out how we can facilitate more of a warm handoff between our schools. And part of bringing all of the schools together is for staff to be able to get to know each other even within the same feeder system, so that when we are helping families with that transition, which can be very rocky, that we can do everything on our part to facilitate that transition. And also looking at parent involvement at the elementary school level is different than at the secondary level, and looking at how we can make that more robust in those in middle school and high school.
Board members, other questions or comments? Shelley? Okay, Jenny, then Shelley.
So I have a couple of comments. First of all, I'm going to go back to the graduation thing and say that that we can save most of this discussion for our June work session. But I hope that whatever it was I heard you say about the possibility of 8th graders taking ACT tests, which I'm not advocating for, but I do know that there is a perceived, maybe not just a perceived need, but there is a need for some TAG students to have an early route to graduate from high school. And I hope that we're not eliminating that possibility for those admittedly few kids who would benefit from that. So, and I'll save the rest of my comments for June. I'm really glad to hear that we're making an effort to knit this work with other work that's going on in our schools, because it's been a fear of mine that what we would do is create silos and make it so that, Madeline, your job is to take care of the parents, and then it's nobody else's job because that's your job. So, and it sounds to me like we're working hard to avoid that, and for that I encourage us to continue down that road. We had an earlier discussion in agenda setting about how it's sometimes useful to know what other districts are doing, and I would think in the area of parent engagement, that could be a particularly useful thing. We're blessed in Boulder Valley to have a highly active parent community, but there are segments of the community that are less involved, and maybe other districts with larger disadvantaged or non-English speaking parent populations who may have more experience with that than we do, and may be able to point the way for us. So I hope we'll look at that as well. And then these are just my suggestions, not board direction, but my thoughts as we go through. We have a group that does and I can't even remember what they're called. Ron, you would know the name of this. The group that sort of, it's an academy for Spanish-speaking parents. Parity, yes. And I hope we'll continue with something like that, and I see an opportunity to expand that to other parents, because I would think that non-English speaking parents or Spanish-speaking parents are not the only parents that don't really know how to navigate our school system. So I hope we'll look at that, and let me also take this as an opportunity to put in a plug for possibly something like a leadership academy, which other districts do, and which is a great training ground, not just for parents, but for potential board members. None of those are questions, but that's what I'm thinking.
Madeline, I just wanted to say thank you very much for the presentation. I really liked how you laid out, especially the inventory of the results that you've seen out there. It's helpful when all this activity goes on with all these committees and everything for actually, the themes to come back to us so we can see what that research has resulted in. And I also really liked your toolbox. I know you're just getting started on it, but I think you've got a great start on it. So thank you for all the work you're doing. And Leslie, I just have a quick question for you on graduation guidelines. I don't see any sort of any information in here about what's come out of these community sessions. And I'm assuming we'll hear that in June, but I just wanted to put a plug in for that. I know I attended one, and there were some pretty strong feelings about it. And I would love to hear how those might be playing out across the district. So, yeah.
It's our intent to bring those in June.
Richard?
Madeline, thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation, and I know you're working very, very hard in terms of trying to get parent-family partnerships tied together somehow here in the school district. I just want to point out that there's a group called Engaged Latino Parents Advancing Student Outcomes in Boulder County through the Community Foundation serving Boulder County, and they've invested a lot of time and effort both in Lafayette and also in Boulder proper. And they're also working in Longmont, but that would be a good group to engage in this process because these particular individuals are actually going door to door, knocking on individual doors, trying to identify the gaps that exist in the school district as it relates to people that actually get the information and those that don't. And I know they're focused on early childhood education. However, many of those families that are in that particular group also have school-age kids. They also have high school kids. And so that would be a good resource. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Kathy?
I just want to say thank you, and I echo what Shelley said. I think the toolbox is a nice start, the graphics and the principles, and so I look forward to learning more about it, but thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, and I also want to thank you. It's an impressive amount of work that has been done in the relatively short time you've been here, so thank you very much. And Dr. Messenger, to your point about the 50 different or over 50 organizations that we can work with, you address a kind of maybe a lack of solid connection amongst everybody. Is there anything duplicative about what these organizations are doing in your observation or your staff's that we could maybe, just to make maximum use of the limited resources we have? I sometimes worry that, too many of the nonprofits are in silos.
Well, I certainly think we can be a part of the network that would help address some duplication, but also some inefficiencies. So I think that folks can see ways to complement each other more effectively. I would hope that would be a byproduct as well, in addition to building capacity. I think that'd be a part of the capacity building. I think we're hopeful about that. And then find the gaps, because there are gaps as well.
Well, we appreciate the updates from both of you. Thank you very much. Board members, I need to take a 5-minute break before we move to action items, just a restroom break for 5 minutes. Okay, we're reconvening our regular meeting. Next item on the agenda is the action items consent grouping. I will now read them aloud. 8.1 personnel items, 8.2 approval of minutes, March 8th, 2016 regular meeting, 8.3 approval of minutes, March 15th, 2016 special meeting, 8.4 approval of minutes, March 29th, 2016 special meeting, 8.5 2015-16 cash management update, 8.6 amendment to the construction agreement contract for bond-funded artificial turf and synthetic tracks, 8.7 amendment to the construction manager general contractor agreement for bond-funded project at Douglas Elementary, 8.8 amendment to the construction manager general contract agreement for bond project at Whittier Elementary, 8.9 approval of Casey Middle School indoor air quality committee applicants, 8.10 approval of the architectural design and engineering services contract for bond-funded improvement work at Broomfield High School, 8.11 award of contract for architectural and engineering services for bond project at Aspen Creek K-8 school, 8.12 award of contract for architectural and engineering services for bond project at Manhattan Middle School, 8.13 award of contract for architectural and design and engineering services for bond-funded project at El Dorado K-8 school, 8.14 change order to the construction manager general contractor guaranteed maximum price contract for bond-funded improvement work at Broomfield Heights Middle School, 8.15 data visualization application Tableau, 8.16 final acceptance of bond program project for bond offices at Arapahoe campus, 8.17 non-renewal of contracts, 8.18 grant food service no preschooler hungry nutrition bag program Colorado Health Foundation, 8.19 grant Justice High School Colorado School Counselor Corps Colorado Department of Education, and 8.20 grant Special Education School to Work Program, the Colorado Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Are there any items any board member would like to pull from the consent agenda? If not, I need a motion. Motion by Tina, second Jenny. Are there any questions board members have about any items on the consent agenda? Shelley?
Yeah, probably, Bruce, you can answer. A lot of these are just quick ones. For 8.6, the construction contract for the artificial turf, you know, we've got a letter from somebody who was promoting their business, and I seem to recall Don Orr saying that we were doing something very green and healthy with our turf, and I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, we've moved away from the shredded rubber base to one that's more of a natural base as a result of, that's why these were delayed for a year, so we could do the research on that. So,
okay, so
these are reflective of that.
That's covered, thank you.
Better surface.
Then 8.9, the Casey Middle School air quality
Yes.
thing. I'm wondering, we still need 4 members, right, from Casey?
I think that we're still short, unless we've got some new recruits today.
Yes, we do have the health services named today. One of our nurses is going to sit on there, and I know Justin McMillan, the principal at Casey, is working on recruiting the rest of the staff, so we should have that shortly.
Okay, so can we move ahead with setting a
Yeah.
date? Because if we don't, the school year is going to be over. and we
Yeah, I
won't-
think it'd be good to go ahead and do that, and then we'll just try to roll people in as we get them
Okay.
available.
So I talked to Tom, and we both have Wednesday, the 20th available. So maybe if you're sending a letter out to people for a meeting,
Sure.
20. Sometime after work, like 6 or so, or 6:30?
We can work back to get a time.
Okay. And then for the food service grant, couple of questions about that. So this is a program that a previous donor supported and no longer supports? Is that correct? I mean, that's what it
Leslie,
said.
do you have background on that?
No, it's Gordon Gam, and he still is supporting it. This is just additional support for the grant, and also the YMCA has contributed funds for this.
Okay, so
It's just additional support.
The 83,000 is money we're already getting from him, or you're saying this is just all new, everything is new in this?
This is new resources as far as I know.
So I just kind of want to understand this program, because we're doing this during weekends and holidays, right?
Correct.
Correct. So, and it says that this is for our neediest kids, but then it says that we're going to be doing this for people regardless of their official income status. So how does that work? Why aren't we identifying our neediest kids for this program?
Dr. Messenger, would you like me to respond
Yeah,
to that?
if
Okay,
you
great. So what they're doing is they identify certain preschools, and instead of just providing bags to just some of the kids, they make it available to all of the kids so that it's more seamless.
I can certainly understand that logic if it's done during the school day at school, that you don't want to isolate those kids. But when it's on weekends and holidays, does that?
And
is
they
that
take
rule-
it with them at the end of the day.
On
Correct.
Fridays?
It goes with them on the bus.
On Fridays.
Fridays,
so
Right,
It's
it gives- it's given
distributed
to
at
them.
the site
Okay,
for the
that makes more sense. Okay, those are my questions about that. And should I keep going?
Yeah.
Or- Did you want to ask about that? Okay. On 8.19, just a quick question about the Justice High School grant. Do we, I should know this by now, but do we usually approve grants for charters?
We've asked that they go through the district, yes.
Okay, this is usual, okay.
Trying
And
to
then
be
8.20, that grant, the Special Ed School to Work program, I know I've asked about this before. Do we do any program evaluation on this grant? Because we've had it in prior years, right, many prior years.
I assume it's a condition of the grant award that we do evaluation. We can check on that and follow up if you'd like.
Yeah, and can we get a copy of it? Because, I mean, we're looking at $10,000 per student to do this. And I'm also wondering if we're not, if this isn't giving us the result we want, is there another program that we could go through besides this particular Colorado program? I'm just, it's expensive and we're going into a budget crisis, and I just want to make sure we're getting our money's worth. I think it's a good idea to do it, whoever we do it with. But I just
Could
would
follow
like.
up with Ron Yahtzee, yeah,
Yeah.
see what the evaluation's been
Okay.
done.
And then, is that it for the consent? The records policy is not on consent, right?
Correct.
So, okay,
It's an
that's it
action
then. Thanks. Yeah.
Other questions on consent items, Tina?
Yeah, for the data visualization software, which is, I know that Tableau is also used by the CDE. Will those systems then be able to talk directly, or will it be, is that one of the advantages to that, or?
There are other users in the state, so having, in addition to the quality of the software, also having common users is an advantage. The reality is that we could talk across other platforms as well, but clearly the familiarity with Tableau in our state is an advantage, all
Okay.
things being equal.
No, I thought that was great, so that, also just for users, if
Right.
it could look a
Some
little bit like the CDE, it'd be nice if, because I know some of those graphs today that DAC presented were actually from a Tableau
Yeah.
file, so that
we'll-
would have been,
Yeah, some user groups
that'd be great.
formed.
Other questions? If not, Laura, can you call the vote?
Belval.
Yes.
Benford.
Yes.
Fuqua.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gebhardt. Marquis.
Yes.
And Myers is not here. Motion passes.
Moving on to, and I appreciate everybody being here tonight, and I know that wasn't the outcome you wanted to hear, but there is a process available for further action if you choose that. Next item on our agenda is study items, revised board policy, student records, release of information. Dr. Messenger?
Yeah, so Attorney Melissa Barber is going to address this formally and probably briefly as well, but this is a companion policy that we have talked about previously. We've had a couple of work sessions on the student data privacy and made reference to this policy, and so what we want to do is bring this before you tonight for your review and discussion. Then, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's on May 10th, we are scheduled to bring student data privacy back. So with that, I'll turn it over to Melissa Barber, our in-house counsel. Melissa.
So good evening. As Dr. Messenger mentioned, so you've studied the student data privacy policy, and the student records policy is referenced in that. And then when you look at our student records policy, it's actually about 25 years old. Unfortunately, FERPA hasn't changed in all that time, but there have been some developments and guidance out of the Federal Office of Policy Compliance. And really with the student data privacy changes and the outsourcing of some of the functions that we could do in-house outside the district through contracts with vendors, this policy really informs the public about how we use the student data. So it acknowledges the privacy rights of students and families around the data. It specifies how the families can access the data and the eligible students who are 18 and over. And then it talks about that there are circumstances in federal law that we comply with where we can release data without the consent of families. And those exact circumstances are specified primarily in the regulation, which I've also provided to the board. So you can see kind of the whole picture. Before we had a little bit more in policy with some of those real details in the policy, and that we moved more of that to the regulation. So I can walk you through in the policy. We define what student educational records are, set out the purpose, as I just explained. Refer to who the custodian of these records are, primarily the building principal and student records, and then the former students would come out of the enrollment office. And basically sets out the big topics and refers the community to the regulation for all the details. Yeah.
It's a vintage policy, but I guess we would probably plan to bring these back together next time with the student data privacy and this, so there will be additional opportunity to give input. And again, we've done the same review with this policy as we've done with others. So.
Yeah, aligning both policies and then
So they're
aligning them with
complementary.
whatever the state
Yeah,
decides to
so,
do.
I mean, we understand things are still a little bit at play, but we just wanted to get them together, so.
Board members, any questions for Dr. Messenger or Melissa Barber? Tina?
Yeah, so thanks for doing this. So one of the things you touched on is my biggest concern about this. That's just the structure of the policy and the notion of taking a lot of the policy language and putting it into regulation language. And I looked at the policies around student records for 5 or 6 other districts, for Cherry Creek and St. Vrain, Adams Academy, and something else, and not many of them did that. And the reason I think I'm concerned is one of my jobs I see is to really make sure that these issues come forth to the community and that policies have an opportunity for community input. So what I'm concerned about is because these are important issues and they're addressed largely in the regulation, they can be changed without coming back to the community and to the board. And I have the same issue right now with the open enrollment policy that we have. So, I mean, my preference would be to try to put some of the things back into the policy, and I mean, I could go through it, and then to try to use the regulations more for things like exhibits, for lists. One district cited FERPA as a part of the regulation, things like that. And also, some of the districts also included forms to do the written request for the amendment, which I thought was an interesting idea for students that might have less, or for parents who are less comfortable with just writing a free-form request for an amended record. But, and this is probably a board conversation, really, not so much this policy is what do we put in regulation and what do we actually put in policy that needs to come back to the board that gives the community the opportunity to provide feedback. So I don't know, did anyone else?
And we had conversation in
Yeah,
cabinet
I'm
about
sure you
this
did.
because I started with a lot of it in policy, and then it was getting so unwieldy because it is lengthy. So I understand where you're coming from. It's all on the website, so it's there.
Yeah, I mean,
but
it's-
I know
yeah.
what you're saying, that the process for approving a policy is different than for a regulation.
Right, and one thing, like one district, I think, broke it into policies, JRA 1, JRA 2, this is the request for the records, this is the disclosure for military officers, this is the, whatever, so they did for the shared without disclosure, whatever. So there were different approaches to kind of actually break it up so there was no lengthy document. And I don't even know if we want to have different JCA categories with different titles that refer to the specific condition, or if we're asking the parent to wade through what is either a 7-page policy or a 7-page regulation. Since we don't really provide an index to either, I would almost prefer just to put it in the policy because at least it's there, and then you don't have to click over to the regulation, and then you're wading through a lengthy document anyway. I mean, I think my preference is always to err on the side of more community input around things like this, but I'm sure it was a live.
You would like to make it more user-friendly, whatever we move forward with.
Up in policy,
Yeah.
not regulation.
Any other questions or comments? Shelley?
Yeah, Tina, I had the same reaction. It felt to me like the new policy was very skinny down compared to other policies on other district policies, other districts and our own policies. I also took a pretty good look at some of the changes and recommendations, and I have some questions about those. But I think my biggest concern right now is that this state privacy law is in flux. Our own privacy law or policy is not decided yet. And it just feels like, I was glad to hear Bruce say that we're not deciding this now and we're not even deciding it next time, because that's when the privacy policy is coming back, right? So I just think all these things should go together and be a one coherent whole. And it's hard for me to evaluate this as being correct or not without that perspective. You know, like the state law is much more stringent than what we're talking about doing here. So if we want to be at least consistent and maybe even more, you know, stringent, then we would have to take another look at this.
So just timeline, Sam, we may want to just, get this is in front of us, and now we go back to student data privacy, see where we are with state statute, and then, either walk them side by side or get through the student data privacy one, then hold this one up next to it. I think it might be helpful just if a couple of you have interest and time to maybe just highlight some of the areas that you think maybe should be in policy and those that are fine in regulation, because I don't think we want everything in policy, because what can happen then is if it really is of administrative nature and not that which maybe wants public review, I mean, then you wind up just not following it, because if every time we need to change the how to do something, that has to come back for policy review, I mean, that's where we get out of compliance. So I think it's trying to pull that apart. I mean, generally my belief is policy says, what do we believe, and then procedure is, or regulations, how do we do it? So if we're clear on what we believe as it relates to records or student data privacy, then how we do it shouldn't be too inconsistent with what we believe. But saying that's easier than actually doing it. But if there's some areas that you think are in the regulation that are more about what we believe and what our guiding light is, then we need to get that up into policy, because that's really what public probably has most interest. How we actually do it, can become more administrative. So anyway, but.
Well, what process would you like for the individual
Well, I
board
think
member
if,
input?
Tina or Shelley or others have, just if you want to work off this and could get it to Melissa, we've got some time. We've got a month probably before we bring student data privacy back. Then we could at least give some options within there. I mean, as Melissa said, we went back and forth on this a bit ourselves and just didn't want so much in policy. Then every time we need to make a minor change, it has to come back for policy review, because we know that will slow us down. So,
Well,
but
and
if
are
we
we
could begin to pull those apart, that'd be helpful.
Are we confident that our privacy policy will mirror what the state is going to approve, or are we putting the cart before the horse?
Well, I think we probably won't bring policy back here until the state has gone through whatever it goes through this spring. That's our plan, Sam. And then if by chance it goes off the rail and they don't again, then I think we'll have to decide. Last year we postponed it for the same reason, but we'll talk about that in May. If the state doesn't get their way through legislation, then we may say, well, we're going to go ahead and plant our flag anyway, and then we can always change it.
Okay.
But anyway, May is what we're thinking. Into June is fine as well.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Shelley?
No. Do you want to work on that, Tina, with me, or? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll do it.
Go.
Okay.
Other questions or comments, board members? Jenny?
Well, I'd just like to thank Tina and Shelley for taking that on, because you raised some issues that I would like to talk about, but I don't really know how to. So I'm looking forward to what you're bringing back, something that's a little more concrete, because and that'll be helpful. So thank you.
Okay.
Richard, you good? Okay. All right, I think that's it. Thank you, Melissa. Next item is agenda setting. The agenda setting committee met before this meeting, and of course we have our budget work session next Tuesday, and we're moving through other standing items as well as trying to integrate the prioritized items from our work with Heather Bergman. Are there any other items any board members would like to bring up now? Yes, Jenny.
So I just have a question, which is, are there going to be notes, or is there like a Google Docs that can be shared with us so that if board members want to go in and see what's coming up in its outline form, which is what the agenda setting committee looks at?
That's all available.
It's all available. I just wanted to remind us, so it's,
So, yes.
And we also.
As well as we keep it up.
Yeah, and the RFI spreadsheet will also be
We'll make that available as well.
viewable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, oh, Shelley? Yeah.
Yeah, I just would like to reiterate that I would like some understanding of how we adjust for schools who have a lot of free and reduced lunch kids and how that impacts the fees in the school and what the schools are able to offer. So I will, do I need an RFI for that?
That might, just so we make sure we get the question right.
Okay.
So we don't provide you information that isn't what you want.
All right, board members, we will see you next Tuesday for our work session, and this meeting is adjourned.